kill their phones?
So Dennis, are we ready to go? All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm John Choi, the Ramsey County Attorney, and thank you for being here today as we announce some charges around a wage theft case. But I want to talk about this and give you some context about why this case is really important, and it's emblematic of the partnership and the work that's been done over really a long period of time. You know, for some of you who may have been around for a long time, you know, I started as county attorney back in 2011, and some of the work that I did early on in my career was to work around human trafficking, and that includes sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And one of the things that we learned back then was that oftentimes in this complaint-based system that we have around how we enforce our laws, where somebody needs to raise their hand, that oftentimes those who are being victimized aren't going to necessarily raise their hand. In fact, they are oftentimes the most vulnerable in our community, in our society, and that we need to take extra efforts to build out a system by which we can gain trust with the victims that we work with, and then also to make it clear that certain things are just not allowed in our society. And I think one of the biggest challenges around the work that we've been all doing around wage theft is to get to this place where we believe that if you're not paying someone's wages properly, if you're not paying prevailing wages, if you're not paying taxes or insurance in the context of business, that it's actually a crime. And for a long time, I think the way that our systems and our society have configured itself to respond to all of this is to look at it in a civil way, that if you could just pay back the people that you cheated out, then everything would be fine. And that's been a challenge to kind of build out that infrastructure. For a long time in Ramsey County, we've been working in partnership with the people that you see up here to bring people together to prioritize around this. And I'm just so grateful here to Chief Henry, who we had an arrangement where Sergeant Mike D. Tomaso could work in our office to work on specifically these issues and build relationships with the advocates and the victims. And so today, what we are announcing is really the culmination of a trifecta of investigation. I think whenever you have a comprehensive wage theft type of investigation, we should be including aspects of insurance fraud and tax fraud. And today we have representatives from the Department of Revenue as well as the Department of Commerce insurance fraud section together, who all collaborated on this particular case. So 12 months ago, we got a tip from advocates who are monitoring certain job sites that there was something happening at McDonough Homes, a project in St. Paul. There was a roofing and a gutter project that was being let out there, and then we received some tips from advocates, and then we started our investigation. So with 12 months of hard investigation by the people on this particular case, and then expanding that out to the insurance fraud as well as to revenue. Today, we are announcing charges against 3 defendants, which make up Bayvista Corporation. It's an S corporation. The owners of that corporation are Jose Herrera, Kerry Gutbrod Herrera, and Joseph Herrera. And we are alleging against Joseph Herrera 8 felony counts that involve wage theft, insurance fraud, and tax evasion. And what we're essentially alleging, and the complaint is one of the most detailed complaints that I've ever read in my entire career. It's 19 pages, but it tells a story about how this subcontractor on this public housing authority project to fix the roof and the gutters were underpaying the workers on the job. They were not being paid prevailing wage, and that was a contractual obligation as well as a legal obligation. And we know for a fact that the the contractor and the subcontractor knew very clearly that the rate of pay for the roofing should have been $68.54, and then for the gutter work, for the sheet metal work, it should have been $83.74. So what was happening on these job sites is that basically workers were being paid cash under the table, and then the reporting would be that they would have paid this amount, but they did not. So as a part of all of the totality of the work that was done by investigators, with 7 victims cooperated, and I want to thank them for their courage and willingness to work with our investigators to tell us about what happened to them. We believe that there's probably about 24 total victims. And I think there's other things that, as a part of this investigation, that it will lead towards. So we can only do one thing at a time, but as with any investigation, the facts always lead the way. And so as we continue this investigation, and by the way, this investigation is still ongoing, so we can't go into the details beyond what's in the probable cause statement. But I think importantly, what I want to convey is that the loss to the workers, as well as what it does to the industry. It's just simply not fair that subcontractors can have these really low bids. And I think as a society, we need to think about that when we procure contracts, oftentimes the law talks about the lowest responsible bidder in these government contracts, but what we really need to also be thinking about is the responsible aspect of the bidding process. And so as we move forward in building out this robust way of investigating these types of crimes, this will not be the last case. In fact, we have many, many more that are in the pipeline, but what you will see is a continued partnership and collaboration between various agencies, St. Paul Police Department and the Department of Revenue and the Department of Commerce. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Henry to say a few words, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple quick things here that I think are super important to hit on. There's a lot of thanks to be given out to the investigators, to law enforcement, to the prosecution teams that have worked on this. I think one of the groups that we want to make sure we flag here is the building and trades folks. A little over 3 years ago, before I was the chief of police, we were having conversations with the folks in the building and trades. I think some people think that those folks are just looking out for their membership. They are not. They are looking out for what's fair and what's right out in our community, and they identified that this was a big issue. The reason why that is super important to us is there are a lot of crimes that we in law enforcement investigate and prosecute folks for that might, as an individual, prevent that individual from committing that crime again. I truly believe that by doing the cases in the manner in which the Ramsey County Attorney is doing it and all our partners are investigating these, if we charge these cases now, we address these crimes now, future businesses will never go down these paths themselves. They will never not cooperate with the process and not advocate for the individual and not do what's right out there. So again, there's a lot of thanks to be given out on these. The work is certainly not done, but I want to make sure we hit with that building and trades group. They have been unbelievably good partners. They have been on the forefront of this issue and have helped us to fill in the gaps and close those gaps so that folks that are breaking the rules or not following the law are now being held accountable. Thank you so much.
I think Dennis, just one more thing too, and I want to just make this really clear too. So as we continue to investigate wage theft in Ramsey County and throughout the state of Minnesota, for those, we encourage more victims to come forward. And so in your reporting, if there's any way to include our number 651-266-3371, that would be a phone line where people could come and make a report if they suspect that there is wage theft that's happening.
So before we take the first question, I want to clarify that we mentioned Joseph Herrera, who was his father, the principal owner, Jose Herrera, which is in your packet for all of you to read. Just to clarify, he's the primary alleged offender in this case. So, first question, Luke.
How much easier did it make the investigation that this was a publicly funded project to be able to track the dollars and so forth? And as far as making it possible to conduct an investigation like this, and how much harder would it be if it were a privately funded project?
I think one of the things that helps, and one of the interests is that, and I think this is an important thing, is that we have laws and ordinances that are on the books that establish prevailing wages. We have an expectation, the public should have an expectation, that public dollars should be spent in a way that's responsible and according to the values. And so in the context of what we prioritize, it would be in that context. So we believe that the obligations are very clear, whether it's the not paying the specific prevailing wage for this type of work, and the contractual provisions that exist within the public housing agency in terms of what they established in their contract.
I guess what I'm asking though
Yeah.
is it even possible to catch people that are doing this when it's a private development? If the exact same thing
Yeah.
is happening, but you don't know where these dollars are coming from, you don't have that access to it.
I think it can, certainly, if there's a contractual obligation to pay a certain amount of wage, right? So usually the purchaser, like somebody who's building a big facility, might impose, in the law would impose certain wage requirements, and then the contractor then lets out with the subcontractors. Those workers that are working on that project are entitled to that wage. But what we need in those instances, number one, are victims to come forward, and we need to have access to the payroll records, right? And so that would add another layer of some sort of investigation. We had a lot of cooperation with the St. Paul Public Housing Agency, because from their perspective, their value would be that if they have a contract, that the people that are working on that contract would be paid fairly.
So you said there may be 24 victims, but these charges are based on wage theft for 10 workers totaling $35,000. Is that right? So that's what these charges are.
I believe it's 7 workers.
But then the 3 gutter replacement workers? Or was it?
So Tom, maybe you want to answer that question? My recollection is that it's 7 workers.
That's correct. It's 7 workers. It's 4 who were performing primarily roofing replacement work, and then the 3 gutter workers were in addition to those 4, so a total of 7.
Got it.
And we believe that the wages that were stolen are about maybe $250,000. I mean, this is still an ongoing investigation.
And then, sorry, I just wanted to ask about, what responsibility workers may have to be witnesses as this case proceeds. Under the Biden administration, there were protections for undocumented workers who were victims of crimes such as wage theft, or in a new administration, is there any protections for these workers that they might land in the crosshairs of the Trump administration immigration?
Well, this is still an ongoing investigation, and I don't want to address like the documented status of the victims and witnesses. I think at the end of the day, the best practice and the way that I think that we should try to be able to prove these cases, and I'm just talking generally speaking, okay, is the gold standard would be to not have to heavily rely upon the victim or the witness to actually have to testify. I actually think that this case could potentially be proven just by the documents itself, because I think it's that crystal clear about what is legally obligated by the actors involved in this particular case.
Just to follow up on that, do you think the current ICE enforcement makes these types of investigations more difficult, though? I think it's commonly known that most of the victims in these types of cases are undocumented.
Generally speaking, I do, and I think that's one of the reasons why we need to have expansions of laws like U-visas to include this type of economic crime, that we need to figure out ways in which, because we can't hold people accountable if someone doesn't raise their hand. That's the system that we have. Somebody has to say that this happened to me. And thankfully, we have a lot of advocates, the unions are very laser focused on making sure that workers' rights are upheld in this town. And thankfully to them, they're helping us make those reports, but at the end of the day, we need to corroborate that. And we can only corroborate that if we create that trust and space where we are developing the relationship and we have that trust. But it's hard in that context where you have witnesses and victims who are in that type of situation and who are vulnerable. And this is the type of crime where it's all about vulnerability. And so one of the things that you're talking about is one layer of vulnerability for these individuals. But I am very grateful and thankful that 7 victims did cooperate and come forward and tell us what had happened to them. And that has helped us develop the probable cause and getting the documents that we needed to bring this case forward.
Any other questions?
I think wage theft is something that a lot of like progressive prosecutors have said that they want to tackle, but I think results-wise, there's been fewer cases than maybe the public has expected. Can you put into context, I mean, is this like a really difficult and time-consuming type of investigation, or how does it compare to others?
It is. It's like I kind of started at the beginning of my remarks. You know, I've been in this role for a long time, and it was a lot like sex trafficking. You know, when I started back in 2011, I started having conversations with police chiefs all around the state about this issue, and a lot of people said, what are you talking about? Today, I don't think there'd be a police chief in the state of Minnesota that would deny that this is actually happening, right? And so the challenge here, I think, first of all, is that mentality. I mean, a lot of police agencies across the state, this would not be necessarily a priority. And so, but in Ramsey County, because of the partnership and the collaboration, we are making it a priority and developing that capacity within the police department and the sheriff's agency. And then also on top of that, we started very early on developing the strong partnership with the Department of Revenue and Department of Commerce, but now the investigators are in the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. But those are the places, and also Dolly, because they have a lot of the situations involving civil law. But it's those agencies and bringing them together, focusing on this notion that this is actually a crime and that we want to prioritize it. So I want to give some credit to Mike Freeman, who was one of the early people who created a labor advisory committee. He and I co-chaired that when we started that. But we both kind of got to that, you know, we brought everybody together and said, we need to start looking at this as a crime and we need to do that investigation. And it was hard to try to develop that capacity. And so it took us a long time to get the funding from the Ramsey County Board so that we could do the prevailing wage enforcement as well as the criminal investigations. And then we've had a number of folks that were in that role. And then thankfully to Chief Henry, who gave us Sergeant DiTommaso to be a part of that unit, and that's really helped us greatly. And all the people that worked before Mike, they had a huge role in kind of building up and getting to where we are today. But it's just, it's a long road to get people to focus on and changing the priorities, and that's the goal of what we're trying to do.
And getting workers made whole, is that the responsibility of Dolly's investigation, or do you do that?
No, I think the most exciting thing about this particular case is that I hope to be able to return the lost wages, the stolen wages to these workers. That's going to be the highlight. And then, of course, holding these individuals who are part of the criminal enterprise accountable.
Any other questions?
Is the business still operating? And where is it out of their house in Minneapolis?
So it's Bayvista Corporation. I think there's information about it, about the corporation in the complaint. There are 3 owners. All 3 of those owners are being charged with felony crimes. The 50% owner is Jose Herrera, and we have leveled 8 felony counts against him. And then both the other 2 owners, Kerry Gutbrod Herrera and Joseph Herrera, those charges relate to felony tax evasion.
Were it based out of their house in Minneapolis?
I don't know. In terms, I've never been to their house or their to their address.
They don't have a separate office somewhere in another city?
I don't know.
Okay.
You could go knock on the door if you have an address.
Have, I mean, I'm assuming police tried to reach out to them, and what was their cooperation?
You're asking specific questions about the investigation, which we don't want to get into because there are continuing aspects of this investigation, especially as it relates to revenue and other things, so we just can't go into that.
Great, thanks, everybody. We'll be here for a little bit more. If you have additional questions, we will send everything back out to you all in about an hour, so you have everything that we are talking about in your hands in electronic form. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Lou News from Carolina News. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the one that had a big interest in the Turner Court case.
Yes.